Alright, so moving to the front end of the T-Bird, I've got some serious brake wobble, and I mean it's bad. The whole car shakes, the steering wheel shakes, so I assume warped disc rotor in the front, and also it just feels like the steering's loose going down the road. And I checked the tie rods first off, and I really didn't see anything. And then I kind of thought, well, maybe it's somewhere up here in the steering shaft, and didn't see anything there either. So then one day, I decided to check the wheel bearings. Just out of the blue, I was like, you know what? I wonder about the wheel bearings. Probably been a while since I tested them or looked at them or anything. I did put new rotors on this, but I don't know how many thousands of miles ago or how many years ago. But I kept thinking for a long time, it'd be nice to have an on-car disc rotor lathe, and you can get those for under $1,000, but for me it'd be, you know, like a one or two time use, and just it wouldn't be worth having one. And I thought, well, I'll go out and check the bearings first, and I did. So I jack up the car and I do an up down, and I feel some movement. So you take off the lug nut, or the lug nut cover and the little cap to get to the bearing nut, and you take off the keeper, you know, and that nut is just supposed to be just so many inch-pounds. It's almost nothing. Like you could just, you know, just drop your ratchet over and boom, that's tight enough, and you're supposed to be spinning the wheel while you do it too. So I took all that off and I tightened it a little bit, and you know, a lot of it came out. I went out for a drive, and it did feel better. Still had the brake wobble, so I'm pretty sure it is actually a warped disc on top of that. So I was like, you know, I never did the bearings. I just re-greased them whenever I replaced the rotor the first time. So I was like, this car's got, I don't know, it's close to 180,000 miles on it. Who knows if the bearing's ever been replaced? So I thought it's probably time. And also I just kind of felt like I could tighten the spindle nut until it just bottomed out. It didn't feel like I was really tightening on the bearings. It felt like I was bottoming out, which it just didn't feel right. I don't remember it feeling like that last time I did the disc rotors. So I thought, you know, bearings are probably pretty cheap, and I was right. I did get rotors from Rock Auto, and they were a little heftier. I want to say they were $30 or $40 a piece, and the bearings were probably, I don't know, maybe $5-10 a pair. So it wasn't that big of a deal. And I thought, well, if I'm doing bearings, I could take my old rotors off and have them machined. And then I thought, oh, how much is machining going to be compared to $30-40 for a new set? And I have no idea if there's meat left on these rotors and whatnot. And I live in a pretty small town, and I don't actually know anybody that machines rotors in my town. So I thought, well, screw it, I'll just get new rotors. Unfortunately, I think the only stuff that you can get is China made now, which, you know, if I ever get into the distant future with this car and do a 5-lug conversion, then I'll have more options, you know, and rotors will be a lot cheaper and easier to replace too. So anyway, let's dig in here. Okay, the first bit's pretty obvious. Before we jack it up, the lug nut cover off, and we're just going to break free the nuts. If you do this after you jack it up, you'll just spin the whole wheel. Now we jack it up. Alright, so I've jacked it up right on the A-arm, and lug nuts should still be tight enough where they're not going to show me any play. This is when you would do left or right. It really feels like there's something there, but my steering wheel's moving. And then up to down, I can hear a click. There's not really much in the way of movement, but just the click is enough for me to be like, yeah, why not? Now we can go ahead and get the wheel off. Okay, now I'm going to take the brake pad caliper off because I am going to be removing the disc rotor. I'm going to start cheating now a little bit using some air tools. Looks like 2 11/16. Those actually looks fairly well greased. And I do have some new ceramic stuff I'll put on those when we put it back together. If I can find a way, now would be a good time to try to spread the pads out from the rotor, or try to get the piston pushed back in. Looks like this might actually work a little bit here. Get a twofer going here, because I'm sure the new rotors are going to be thicker. Looks like the inside pads having trouble coming out. Could probably use some grease on its slides. I don't think there's much in the way to pry against on the backside though, against the pad. Well, it looks like putting the screwdriver between the pad and the rotor and just wiggling the shit out of it had the most impact. There we go. And I have a piece of mechanics wire. I can use to hold it up somewhere. I don't necessarily love using bungees for this. Most people do. I ain't going nowhere now though. Okay, so get the brake rotor off, get the dust cap off, and I also do this when the wheel is still on there, like when I was trying to, I'd say, readjust the bearing, I guess maybe. Get a big chisel punch and hammer. Go in at a couple sides with the wheel on there. You'll have to get at an angle about like that, and that's okay. It'll still come off. Okay. Pin out. Keep her off. And I don't remember what size that nut is. I don't think I have a socket for it. I do not have a socket. I was just using a very large adjustable, a 12-inch adjustable. Nut off, and there is a washer behind that, and the bearing is stuck to it. The outer bearing stuck to that. Kind of looks like there is some wear on the bearing cage, which might be an excellent indicator that it was past due for getting out of there. And the brake rotor will come off. Looks like the inner bearing came with it. I want to say there should have been No, it's still there. I'm gonna say there should have been a rubber seal, but it's still there. That's what held the bearing in. And I'm out of frame. Alright, so inner bearing stayed in because of this rubber seal right here. Which is actually all the way up to here. And I'm actually not sure, it probably didn't come with that seal. It wouldn't be the worst idea to replace that. Maybe again, I probably replaced it when I put these rotors on actually. Here you can see, compared against the new one, that rubber seal is not there. So if that one doesn't come out very well, I'll have to get a new one. Oh, I'm wondering if I can just flip it over and beat against that bearing, if it'll push out the rubber seal. Like so. That was easy. There's actually some wear on the outer ring of that too, which is worrisome, but as long as the actual seal part right here is okay, no cuts, then it should still be effective. Actually quite a bit of rust on that one. I have no idea when the last time was I repacked these bearings. But I don't put a ton of miles on my car either. See, I'll clean that seal up a little bit here and see how good it still looks. So yeah, the seal looks good to me. And my local auto parts stores don't even have them anyway. So I'd have to drive quite a ways or wait a couple days to get a new one. So now I'm just hoping that the passenger side comes out as well as this one did, so I don't have to replace it. So now the big thing is to clean the spindle. Really shouldn't see any damage here, but now's the time to check. Definitely try to clean the threads as best you can. Feels good. So now let's pack the new bearings. Alright, the new bearings come complete with the race, which is that part. And those are already installed in the new disc brake rotor. But if you're just doing bearings, of course you're going to have to beat those out of the old rotor and press these in. So another reason to just get a new rotor, honestly. And I do not have one of those cool bearing packers, so I'm going to have to do it the old way, by hand. That was definitely not enough grease. I'm doing the inner first. Because that's basically captured by that seal. Oh, that is not the right bearing. Not even close. Crap. It just fell right in there, right past the race. So yeah. Guess I should have checked that before I greased it, right? Alright, so the parts stores did have the inner bearings. And yes, that is correct. size, thankfully. See if I can mop up some of that extra grease down in there. And the seal, I'm going to reuse my old one because the parts store was awfully proud of the ones they had. The national brands was like $14 a piece or something. I was like, I mean, this is basically just a dust seal. I mean, think about the outer cap. The cap has no real seal on it on the outside. So I'm just going to put some fresh grease on this one and pound it back in after I clean up a little bit here. And the seal should just pop right back in. No problems. Couldn't hurt to have a little bit on that riding surface of the seal. And the outer. And the washer, which I'm a little dirty from old grease. Cleaning it up. A little grease on the nut. And probably actually wait till I get the wheel on to do much tightening on that nut. Just so I can spin it while I'm doing that, but I'll go ahead and slightly put the cap back on there so no rust and whatnot gets in there. And we can try to get the brake caliper back on. What's funny is the surfaces that pad rides on actually feel pretty decent. Put some grease on those. You know what? I missed a step here. New rotors are going to have an anti-rust coating on them, and that's bad for the pads. So find some brake clean and clean them real good. And we definitely don't want to forget the back side. Exactly what I didn't want to do with the caliper. And technically this surface, a little anti-seize wouldn't kill us, because that's what sits against the actual wheel. You don't want that corroding together. Well, there was just enough spread apart there to make that happen. Remember I was talking about the caliper bolts being somewhat greased? I could actually improve that some. Get the old stuff cleaned off here. And I believe you can actually buy some new rubber boots for the back side. Hoping these are still in decent enough condition. Find my ceramic stuff. Here's the ceramic brake extreme brake parts lubricant I was talking about. And I'm really only worried about this end down here. On this side of the threads, it's all exposed to weather anyway, so it really wouldn't be doing any good to lubricate it. Get it past that front pad. Should be good to go. Now I talked about this on the Envoy inner outer tie rods, but that's the kind of coating that comes off the springs that I normally see, and that's why I thought those will still look good. So I'd say this is mostly done, or we're getting close to done. Time to put the wheel back on. something else I just realized is new brake rotor means new studs. So I'm going to put some anti-seize on those. This is just a Napa brand nickel type anti-seize. A little bit goes a long way. Run these down with the impact, but not quite tighten them. All right. So now I have access. Yeah, the problem is now the pads are dragging quite a bit. It's hard to really feel any difference. But it's just, there is a recommended procedure. So many inch-pounds, and then maybe like a quarter turn or something like that. I can't quite remember anymore. I remember it was difficult to make heads or tails of it, especially with the freaking pads dragging like that. So I'm going to call that good right there. I'm going to keep her back on there. Pin. Like so. And the dust cap can go on there. Now I can lay the jack down. Torque these lug nuts. I use 90 pounds. Double check. Wheel cap with lug nut cover back on. Done deal. Well, I'm ready for a test drive. How about you? Well, the rotor wobble is definitely gone. That's a good thing. Steering feels a lot tighter. Definitely feels like I'm out of alignment now. It's definitely wanting to pull one way or the other. Let's pull to the right a little bit. Those brakes are spongy now. I didn't open them up, but it feels like I need to bleed them. What pads I got on there right now, but I'm guessing they're just some cheap, shitty ones. Not really high performance stuff. Feels like I could use some better pads. Need a new clutch. Definitely a high performance clutch. Just feels like it's slipping. Plus, I think the throw-out bearing or whatever is making a lot of noise. I rebuilt this T5 a couple years ago. Didn't make any video about that either. I was kind of before I was really into doing videos. And I don't think I quite did it right. I think the input shaft play was too little. There's none. I think that's what a lot of my noise is. Well, another thing on maybe upgrading the pads someday, and I don't know if I'll be turned into the front end very much in the future. Maybe if I find out the spindle nut thing was completely wrong and I'm doing it wrong, and then there's a better way, then I might be able to redo that.
about being able to brake without wobbling all over the place. That's for sure.